Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Norton, founder of People Plus Purpose, and your host on this episode of the Truth Behind Dentistry Podcast. And today I am excited to be with Ben Shaver, who is a dental business advisor. For the past 15 years, Ben and his team at Venture Practices have helped dentists and their teams thrive through enhanced brand strategy, marketing, communication, recruiting, and leadership training. So welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Been looking forward to this. I know you've got some wisdom to share. And so
I'll do my best.
That's all we can ever ask. So, I think everybody would say that we're kind of in the midst of a lot of people changes in the world of business. And we talked about not being dated in conversation, right? So I'll still reference the COVID situation and saying that since then, it's that the people part of business has been a more challenging proposition for so many people. So maybe we can talk a little bit, you can address a little bit kind of the current state of human behavior as it relates to staff and patients in the world of dentistry.
Yeah, and that's give a quick little background. I was studying consumer behavior in college. That kind of melded itself into advertising, and had an advertising agency for a while, sold that out to my partners, ended up in dental marketing and had a dental marketing company 15 years ago, long before everybody had one. So that's kind of the path. But as time went on, what we realized in marketing, because we were just really doing lead generation, was internally inside of these practices, we're like, how come some people get great results from marketing and some don't? Mm-hmm. So really it was the staff either not being engaged or not fully understanding the vision or the culture. So we started looking more internally into the practices and realized the best practices are aligned, meaning they've got strong vision from leadership, they've got a great culture from the team that the patients love being around, and that certainly affects the consumer brand. So from a behavioral standpoint, to get back to answering your question, I think we've just seen a lot of changes. We can talk about how practices run and efficiency and systems and processes, but the people side are where the biggest changes are coming. Yes, it's great to do Google and marketing. It's great to run direct mail, but you kind of want to be the first person mentioned on that mom's group on Facebook, right? When somebody's typing in, who's a great dentist in my area. So for us, what we look at is how can we be those people? And it's really comes down to the acquisition and retention of staff. And how are we finding the right people? We work with a lot of people that have just bought a practice or groups that are buying more practices. Sometimes they're an outsider in the practice. They've really got to evaluate, is this team going to do what I want it to do? Meaning I've got this vision. Are they on board?
Right.
Because certainly patients are going to see that. And nowadays, I really feel like patients value their time. Talking about post-COVID, definitely value their time almost more than money. They value experience more so than they value money. And who's delivering that to them? It's usually you and your staff.
Yeah, and I think there has been a lot of focus on it, and it's not inappropriate, on procedure, process, data, software, all kinds of things, right? Technical expertise. But I think we continue to learn that the people aspect is so critically important. And talking with so many dentists that are, I think, genius smart and so incredibly skilled, that didn't learn business in school, and even kind of more significantly, didn't learn how to be leaders of people, right? So suddenly I've got people, especially as you're scaling and trying to have larger practices or then going to multiple practices. Now I'm leading even more people, but when did I learn how to do this, right? So unless there's some expertise, somebody to come alongside and help coach, I think, you can try to study it yourself. There's occasionally somebody in that world who's also has decided to get an MBA or something else where they may have come across better leadership skills, et cetera, then I think this is a challenge. And often I find that it's looking at the teams and finding something wrong with the team members, when really it kind of went back to how well were we leading people in the first place. Is that kind of your experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, the number one complaint I get when we go in and talk to the staff is they don't really know their roles and responsibilities, and they want to be engaged with their job. And so not having that structured properly, that can certainly be a downfall. Not having that vision that they know how to lead, but also how are you organized as well? So we've talked to a lot of different practices about, office managers, in my opinion, are either these great, wonderful people that do a great job, or sometimes they can be the liability that's holding you back a little bit. But there's jobs that people do that are very task laden, that people love to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they're generally probably not the best at the people jobs.
Right.
So it's kind of like, why do you have the front desk person answering the phone for new patients, but also verifying insurance? They're just not in their natural place.
Right.
And so what we do is, back to the example of the office manager, in some practices we're like, you need a patient manager and a patient advocate. Somebody that deals with the people side of this and somebody that deals with the management side of this. Because I do think there's a big difference between leadership and management.
Yeah.
Management, it's process and systems. Leadership, it's more people. But let them kind of help push together those initiatives and work together. I think you'll have a stronger practice that way.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think there's how often that you can contact a practice and have the wrong person answer the phone, right? It's like, was no one else available? How did this happen?
Right. Or nobody answers the phone. That's even worse.
Yeah,
in marketing, that was so frustrating. I'm like, you had an opportunity. How did you miss it? So
right. Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, so much of the marketing money that goes in, and it's like once the people show up, those leads turn into prospective patients, then okay, so did we really bring everything we needed to the occasion to actually invite them fully in and to get on board and serve them well? And I think the answer often is that's not the case, right? And so, especially if we're going to try to be even a little bit more fee for service and not completely insurance dependent, then I think the requirements even go up from a people perspective.
No, I think that's a great point. And one of the reasons I've stayed in dentistry as long as I have is dentistry is extremely unique from a behavioral standpoint, from the consumer behavior standpoint, because there's three different levels, right? I believe that there's a lot of consumers out there, unfortunately, that view dentistry like any other service. Getting my oil changed, getting a haircut, it's a checklist item. So it's very service led.
Right.
Then there's the people that are, the person that's putting their hand in my mouth, I want to kind of know them. I want to know who they are. And I want to have an attachment to the practice. I want, an authentic relationship with them. So you've got the kind of service side, transactional, then you've got that relationship side. But dentistry also has this third area of being transformational, to where you actually are changing people's lives, giving them confidence, making them feel like a completely different person.
Right.
So back to what you were saying, fee for service has to really only live in those second two. They can't really be transactional. And, corporate dentistry, I get that question a lot. That to me is the biggest difference. Corporate dentistry is very transactional, where private practice certainly has an edge if they create an authentic brand.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think those are important considerations, I think, for those that are watching us right now, to consider, well, where am I in my practice focus, my phases of the journey, and what is it I need next to be able to keep moving forward? Where are those needed breakthroughs? To kind of switch areas of focus a little bit, I'd love to I know that you've given some attention to the world of AI. So kind of love to, given so much focus on that right now, I'd love to kind of get some of your thoughts about how you think that's might play out and affect the world of dentistry.
Yeah, I mean, AI is an interesting thing. I think it's the same as what happened when Google disrupted, how we do things, how we research and find things. Same as social media when it came along and allowed us to connect in a different way. Unfortunately, in both of those, we had the bad sides of them as well. And I think AI will present itself the same way. There'll be great opportunities. I'm not on the clinical side, but being part of, these larger consulting groups, the clinical people are talking about, it can create some great treatment plans, some better outcomes clinically for sure. On the backside of that, though, I always look at, you still need to make sure you're maintaining a skill set. I think we depend on automation and AI too much at times, which is fine to some degree. I don't remember any phone numbers from when I was a kid. So I'm glad I can just ask my phone and it calls whoever it needs to, right?
Right.
But on the operations side, there's, some great opportunity there. You know, we write a lot of content because we do a lot on websites just to make sure we're protecting people's brands. And we've gone in and written articles that sometimes aren't accurate, but as long as we know what we're feeding it and, staying up with it, it can at least help us with the research side of it, create an outline, maybe even be that creative brain when we're not really turning it on to give us some ideas to move that forward. I guess you could get on Chat GPT today and say, hey, write an employee manual for dental practice. It'll give you something for sure.
Right.
But there are some downfalls. I mean, you just have to make sure you do double check it. I mean, it's how you feed it. For example, you could say, why was Bill Clinton such a good president? And it would tell you why he was such a good president. Or you could say, why was Bill Clinton such a bad president? And it would tell you why he was a bad president. So you didn't ask good or bad. So it's going to answer how you want it. So that's where it can be used for evil.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think. And I flashed on like self-driving vehicles, right?
Yeah.
As something at least a little familiar or a little similar, that, I can keep my hands off and it's going to respond to situations. But do I 100% trust that? Like I can check out of the process and just be a passive, a passenger in this car while I'm behind the steering wheel? But also, what specifics am I going to run into that might require my attention, require my input? And I think about it the same way there too. It kind of makes us reconsider what the human contributions are in these situations, the perspective, the expertise, or can we rely upon a machine to choose the value proposition, or to be able to help guide decision making? Or do we need to kind of still assess and make our best input? And what is it that makes us kind of uniquely human in this and our advisory role, in addition to just delivering a technical service? So, I mean, what do you think about any of that?
Yeah, I think back to when automation became a big thing in dentistry. So we're going to do automated text reminders. We're going to have chat bots on the website, and we're going to, as much as we can automate it, we will. The problem with that was you really cut into the customer service aspect of it. And you didn't create that authentic experience for that person to talk to somebody on the phone, to feel good about that practice. So then you have no shows, and you have, I think that's the part of it we have to kind of keep an eye on, is we have to still be a part of it. We can't just completely dismiss things and move on and think I still look over my shoulder when I back out of the driveway because I don't fully trust my backup camera. Right. So
right.
Some people do, but I still,
right.
participate.
Yeah. And the example of like with chat bots and things, I mean, it's like anytime it's some sort of computerized interface there, it's like, and then you get, well, I don't understand what your question was, or you realize the nuances that humans are able to discern, plus the fact that you want care. I mean, we're never going to be able to automate care.
Right.
And subtlety, I think, some of the subtle cues and needs that we have as people, and so interesting. It'll be an interesting journey to see what happens over the next 5, 10, 15 years, assuming we're all here to watch it. So
right. I mean, I'm all for self-driving cars. I just want them to all be self-driving, right?
Yeah, right. Right. So we have a little bit of time left. So another question, as far as dental owners go, what do you think they need to be aware of relating to sustainability and growth in their practice? What are some key elements that you would have us focus on?
I think it's back to what I was saying with authenticity. When we go in, we have a process we do pretty much straight out of the gate with doing the disc and value assessments. But then we get into what's called the story brand, where I get a better understanding of their vision, who their best patient is. So it really depends on your goals, right? If you're trying to be a big DSO and sell out, get a lot of even, I mean, that's a very different path than if you're trying to have several successful practices that bring you some passive income down the road. Are you building it to sell? So ownership is great. Find the people that can help you, certainly. I tell people all the time, I do some business coaching, but I've relied on my business coach for the past 15 years. But he even says, he's like, go find other people not in your industry, have coffee with them once a month, let them kind of dictate what they're seeing, because consumer behavior changes daily. And sometimes you can learn a lot from the guy that owns the HVAC company. Because I mean, think about it for a second. Think about HVAC for a second. They have twice a year, they clean it. If it breaks, you need it fixed immediately because it's a comfort issue.
Right.
And then they'll even sell you a maintenance plan for a monthly fee, so that if you need bigger discounts, so there's some parallels there that you can always learn from other people. But I would love to see dentists get back to being those people in the community that everybody trusts dentists anyway, but that are just more visible, right? That have a presence that, people feel more comfortable making sure they go to a dentist on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I know with clients of mine, I have been strongly revisiting vision and mission. And I think, I mean, we mentioned about fee for service, and I think these things become more obviously important if you start to veer more in a direction away from insurance dependence or as much of that. But remembering, what's my noble purpose in all this? Why does this even matter? What difference do I want to make? And I think that's so easy in the dailiness for that to get lost, right? We get lulled into our routines of the more transactional things that just need to be done. And I forget why I care. And I think that impacts community presence, right? Is the doctor or is anybody in the practice really engaging and sharing their inspired message in the community? No, well, we're busy in here doing what we're doing. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I agree with you. I think there's something lost in that. There is something to be said for, the community education element. What is that bigger difference you want to make, not just with the specific patients that you're serving, but that larger community that your practice is a part of?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the biggest thing is always be improving your communication strategy, whether that's with, I mean, honestly, even with yourself, but obviously with your staff, obviously with your patients, but getting out in the community and making sure that people understand fully what you're about. That philosophical side helps. When we do those story brands, for example, we had somebody the other day, she was like, oh, I want to be a family practice. But then at the end of the day, she was like, you know what? We've got a lot of veterans in our community. I want to service them. I'm going to maybe start taking some of the profit and doing a day of service for them. And that now kind of her thing. And that's how she's going to brand herself in the community. So there's just all these different ways you can stand apart. You just have to take the time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of that can challenge us to re-clarify our inspiration again. What is it that I really care about because I talk to, I don't know about you, I talk to a lot of dentists who are at least a little bit bored with the routine. I mean, I need to keep seeing people. I want to keep growing. I want more, economy of scale, but I don't know. I don't love it. as much as I used to. And I think getting back to, clarifying what we really care about the most, and do I really feel like I'm adding the greatest value I have to give to, to as many people as I would like, or am I just busy and pushing and, trying to get stuff done? And I think that adds longevity. I've been having a lot of conversations about burnout and excessive negative stress and burnout. And I think that's can be part of the reason why. I mean, do you find that to be the case with people you're talking to as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's troublesome to some degree, because then they'll go sell out to that DSO, right? They're like, I'd rather just go work for a DSO. I never actually see them complete their work back. They're generally gone before that happens. Where I'd rather see them bring a younger person in that would like to own that practice one day, that would continue that philosophical journey they might have been on. Or how can they kind of scale up? When you talk about growth, I'm like, look, if you can get this first one right, then go find a second one that matches the blueprint and the footprint of what you're doing here. By the time you get to that third one, you can remove yourself and still make the income you want, but still have an impact, still be able to practice dentistry if you want, or go open a restaurant in Hilton Head if you want. But I mean, there's ways to kind of grow, and everybody in every industry feels burnout at some point. How do you get past it and keep yourself going?
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea that we can reinvent, maybe a little bit more, like you're saying, options for reinvention, not I have to keep doing exactly this or I need to retire. There's a range of other possibilities. And I think that people are not often aware of enough of that. So they feel bound. And then either I love it enough, I like it enough, and I can't leave, or I want to get out, like TGI Friday in my life, right? I'm just ready for the ongoing weekend of my life. And I tend to think that there's more that we're here for, and to keep adding value for, as long as we're on the planet. That's at least that's how I look at it personally. I'm not saying everybody else needs to see it that way, but
yeah. Do you find or have the conversations around finances? Because sometimes I'll tell Dennis, I'm like, you need to get comfortable with where you are financially so that you can make decisions that aren't based on finances.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of it out of, some of those barriers out of the way.
Yeah. Because then we're not really free. We're kind of bound and feeling kind of caught and stuck somewhere. And I don't think that's how people want to live.
Should I hire the second hygienist at $65 an hour so that, we grow this way, but I'm afraid we'll lose too much money. And it's, I'm not an accountant. I certainly don't work in that realm, but it's kind of getting a good relationship with your finances can be very helpful too.
Yeah. Well, good. I've enjoyed our conversation. Time always goes quickly. So for those who've been listening to us and who would like to hear more of what you have to share, some of the service offerings that you might have available to be of help to them, what's the recommended strategy for connecting with you or learning more?
Yeah, the best place to go is our website, venturepractices.com. I'm certainly on LinkedIn, Ben Shaver on LinkedIn, and just connect with us there. You can get right on our calendar. We do a 15-minute discovery call. No pressure with that. So that's probably the best way to contact us.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, appreciate your experience and your wisdom. And there was wisdom today. So thank you for that.
Well, good. I'm glad it landed that way. Thank you. Really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So for everyone watching, this has been the Truth Behind Dentistry Podcast. Matthew Norton with Ben Shaver. And we hope that you've enjoyed it. You've taken away some pearls, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.